and welcome to Dateline London, the no-fly zone in Libya. Where does this leave Colonel Gaddafi, plus Japan's nuclear crisis and the crisis of confidence in the safety of nuclear power? My guests today are Dr. Vincent Magombe of Africa Inform International, Nabila Ramdani, who's an Algerian journalist, Stryker Maguire of Newsweek, and Ned Tepco of The Observer. Well, the no-fly zone in Libya raises a whole series of questions. Will it work? Is the aim really regime change? But what would it take to get rid of Gaddafi? And why did it take so long to achieve? Perhaps because President Obama himself was very reluctant. Can we begin there, Stryker? I mean, he does not seem to have been the greatest enthusiast for this compared to, say, Sarkozy or Cameron.
Well, I mean, there's some very basic reasons for it. Iraq, George W. Bush, and a couple hundred years of American history. I think America was in a weird position here in particular. Anything it does now in that part of the world, in the greater Middle East, is going to be suspect. And there were some philosophical arguments about how this was really should be a European issue because it's on their doorstep, et cetera, et cetera. But he is also a very deliberate kind of individual. I mean, he takes his time.
He did over Afghanistan, for example.
He's frustratingly, purposeful and thoughtful. And so it took him a couple of weeks to get to the point that he finally got this week, which I think, in the end, will help him politically in terms of how we all judge it, because in the end, it was not just a no-fly zone, but it was kind of a no-fly zone plus.
All necessary measures.
Exactly.
Which it kind of expanded to.
Exactly.
And in a way, he in that same fashion, he got basically to a good place in Egypt, but not very elegantly.
Yeah.
In other words,
he got there. But does it suit everybody to pretend that this is the French and the British who are in the lead, where everybody knows without the Americans nothing would happen?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And it suits, as you point out, it suits Britain because this is a maiden foreign policy victory of sorts for David Cameron. It suits Sarkozy, who prefers busying himself in Libya to just about any other political alternative now.
Especially since he desperately mishandled the situation in Tunisia and Egypt. Let's not remember that he completely misread the situation in Tunisia and Egypt. His foreign minister had to resign because she made an appalling speech in Parliament supporting Ben Ali, very obviously offering military and financial support to both Tunisia and Egypt. And let's not forget also that over the Christmas holiday, almost every single of his cabinet ministers was spending some time with an autocrat in North Africa and in the Arab world. The former the Prime Minister, François Fillon, his wife and his 5 children were staying with the Mubaraks. Michel Alliot-Marie was staying with Ben Ali, and Sarkozy himself was staying with the King of Morocco.
Gathering intelligence, no doubt. The mood in the Arab. But there's a paradox here, isn't there? All across the Arab world, can't live with the Americans, can't live without them. I mean, without the Americans behind this wouldn't be happening, and I take it you were in favor of the no-fly zone and whatever it means.
No, you're quite wrong to say that I'm in favor of the no-fly zone.
Right.
I actually think that there's a rather sinister double-speak in the UN resolution, because it claims to protect civilians, to end the violence, and yet it makes it abundantly clear that armed force is going to be used against the Libyans. There are very strong reasons to believe that we cannot trust the pilots to do specific, surgical bombing.
Well, that doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist.
Any party would admit it, although the politicians
Any
do not.
military strategy.
Do you really think that it would be better to do nothing and just let this play out without any kind of military intervention at all?
I think we need to pause and reflect about what is actually going on in Libya that upsets so much the moral West and indeed the Arab League of autocrats who are now, looking at Libya as...
It doesn't upset them with Bahrain, perhaps?
Not with Bahrain, not with Yemen, not with so many...
I'll come to this in a moment, but what's your answer to that question? What is it that upsets the West morally about Libya?
I think we need to look at the big picture in a more rational way. What's happening in Libya is certainly not what's happened in Tunisia and in Egypt, where we had full-scale revolutions, where the vast majority of people peacefully demonstrated against their regime and wanted their dictators to go. In Libya, we have what seems to be a minority of armed rebels who, for all legitimate reasons, are challenging a dictator with whom they're unhappy.
And there's a historical tribal difference between East and West.
Southern
I think I'll be the first one who wants Gaddafi to be really whipped. He's done horrible, nasty things, the dictatorial things. So if he went, I would be sure that we would be looking at other dictators like my president. Everybody going. One day.
Before we came on air, we should have an island where all the dictators
where they can go. And if I was him really to save all this trouble, we should wake up tomorrow and him and his sons have decided, look, let's talk to the world now, we're ready to go.
But that's not going to happen.
Is there a but here? Are you saying but you're not in favor?
No, the but is the approach. There are lots of questions, for example, in Africa, in the Arab Middle East and so on, about the approaches of Western governments, but also United Nations and so on. Are they going, for example, tomorrow? We know that demonstrations are starting to happen in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
If Saudi Arabia uses, and it is ready to use massive force against, are they going to bomb Saudi Arabia?
Well, your answer is no. Exactly. So
Bahrain, Yemen, and then Africa, where I come from, we've had two demonstrations recently after the elections in Uganda against President Museveni. Hundreds of people have been arrested. They're being told they're rebels. Not a single word from anybody. Not a single word.
What's going on in
Western Africa?
I think it's really. I think Nabila is raising, and Vincent too, is a very interesting point. And that is, we have this. I think there's this tendency to see this as this organic thing that has happened in that part of the world. So you have Tunisia, check. Egypt, check. Oh, Libya, check. But it's so different.
Yeah.
We don't know. I know very little about these so-called rebels.
Yeah.
That's an essential point here, because let's remember what Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was saying only a couple of days ago. She stated, we are working extremely hard to try and find out who these rebels are. Who are we dealing with? Well, we don't know who these people are. They might turn out to be worse than Gaddafi.
Indeed they might. But I mean, the point raised by David Cameron yesterday was the reason we're doing things in one country and not in another is because we can.
Yeah.
Of course, that was also what was said in Iraq in 1990.
Although the one thing I'm fairly sure of is this is not going to be another Iraq for lots of reasons. One, it is not only explicitly said in this UN resolution, and I agree with Nabila. For me, the most interesting thing of the last 2 weeks is not the UN, it's the Arab League. It's that basically this historic talking shop where I remember vividly before Iraq War I, these guys saying, oh, hands off this is a fraternal Arab solidarity move, everything will be sorted out, and then, a state is invaded and gets a little bit more messy. But the default position of the Arab League is not to say to the outside world, let's have a no-fly zone. So I think one of the most interesting things is what does it say about
But you don't think much of the Arab League here.
No, I think it was a very sinister move from the main countries in the EU to bring in, some sort of Arab contribution, which is highly tokenistic and surely disingenuous. I mean, there are talks now that Qatar might be involved. What does Qatar have to say about freedom of speech, about human rights, for instance? What does Qatar have to say about the nature of the regime?
I don't disagree with any of that, and I do think any military participation will be strictly token. But I do think it's politically significant that the Arab League publicly said we want to, and for reasons of self-interest. I absolutely agree.
So it doesn't appear as yet another war against the Christian West and the Muslim Arab world. And that's the main reason.
No, but there's more than that. There's a self-interest for the Arab regimes as well, because not because of Libya, but more because of Egypt, which was significant, highly significant.
There are two reasons here. If Gaddafi is perhaps loved by some African leaders, he's been giving a lot of money around in the African continent, so much dishing it at the AU meetings and so on. He's really hated within the Arab leadership community.
There is no hope for him.